Good evening, Australia. Welcome to the Michael Kuzilny Show. Love and best wishes from Michael Kuzilny, a beautiful man on the couch tonight. His name is Mr. Alan Pinkus. He founded a shoe empire back in 1956, spanning over 50 years with shops all over Australia. I remember talking to people, they said this guy was a celebrity in shoes. He was at the races doing the, judging the women. He was on radio talking about fashion and everybody loved him. And then he retired quite a few years ago. But here's the great man. Alan, thank you very much for coming on. I've always been a great fan.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you very much.
It's a great honour because you're a man of wisdom and it's like there's a 24-year-old inside you.
Those are the days.
How did it all start? 1956, Hampton Street, Hampton, first shoe shop?
Yes, 1956, basically after leaving school, I decided to join my brother in the shoe industry. And really, from then on, it just became my passion. And I've got an expression, passion for fashion. And I really find that to be absolutely exciting and exhilarating, making ladies look beautiful.
Oh, and there was a lot of beautiful women around, and you married one of them.
Actually, thank you very much. I'll tell Di that.
Did she? She would have had lots of shoes in that walk-in robe, Alan.
Actually, I think shoes maketh the total look. And a lot of ladies today really don't appreciate fully what a pair of shoes can do for their garment and their whole stature.
You're so right. Alan Pinkus, this is, I always find that parents these days, they want their kids to be a lawyer, a doctor, or this or that, But how did your parents feel when you said, hey, I'm going to get into the shoe industry, into fashion?
Well, I'm only going to say something, quite frankly.
Yes, sir.
That mentor, I thought was a Latin word. I didn't know what it meant. And I had no mentors in my day. Mm-hmm. Our age group didn't know what a mentor was. And so therefore you went your own way. And in hindsight, perhaps I would have liked to have been like you, Michael. With a mouth from the south, I think we could have handled a law degree.
Indeed. Well, I think you would have made a great lawyer, but your career is nothing short of spectacular and exciting. This man still got the life, but some people grow old at 30, some at 40. This guy here, he's younger than most people in this area. He's always joyful. He did go through a bit of a tough time there, and he's going to talk about that quite frankly, but always full of joy. Can you imagine a life where you go to all these shops all over Australia, surrounded by beautiful people, and on the radio talking about fashion and making people feel beautiful? I mean, what a great life.
Well, basically, I can tell you one little incident that happened to me. I was flying back from Perth.
Yes.
Sitting in the back, in the luggage department, and from Perth, and one of the trolley dollies came up to me and sort of said, sorry, that's the old terminology. I love that. Anyhow, so they came up. She said, "Are you really Alan Pinkus?" And I said, "Well, I'm not dead yet." And she said, "Come and sit up in the front." So she took me up the front, and I had about four hostesses, chatting to me about fashion. I love fashion.
Amazing. I was wandering around Sydney a few weeks ago, and I walked into, I think, Myers or David Jones, and I saw all these average shoes, but there was a rack of Alan Pinkus shoes. I thought, this is solid. This is created a lot of work, excellent work. I think when you're called to do something in this life, people, do it to your very best, because you have put excellence into everything you do in life.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I must say, what we did, we specialised in bridal, evening and dress shoes, which means you had the bride, you had the bridesmaids, mothers and the friends and the guests going to weddings. Then we did the races. And so really quite, it was sort of exciting passion. We were individualistic in Australia. Nobody else, I think, in America was handling what we did, looking after that specialisation.
Well, it must have been, Alan. 50 years on, and your shoes are still out there, and it's that excellence you put into those shoes. Did your mates look at you funny and say, what are you getting into Sheila's shoes for? Did they say that?
Well, I can tell you one occasion, if I may. It's a little bit,
Yeah. What happened?
Frisky. Well, I'm sort of in the store opposite the Melbourne Town Hall, serving somebody. I used to love looking after the ladies, I've got to tell you that now. And this lass, blonde, I remember her now, and she said, "I'll wait for you, actually." I hate the word Mr., by the way. I'm just Alan. I don't care who you titles mean nothing to me.
Okay.
It's just Ellen. And she said, I'm not waiting for you, actually, to look after me. And I said, what would you like? She said, I'd like a pair of boots, the ones that went up over the knee, the Bieber boot.
Oh.
From London, right?
Yes.
And so I measured her foot. I went and got the stock, put the boot on her, or tried to, and it's very difficult to get a boot over your knee, Michael. I don't know if you've ever tried that. But anyhow, she was trying.
Yes.
But what she had to eventually do was cross her legs,
Yes.
and pull the boot up like so.
Yes, sir.
Would you believe I'm sitting on the fitting stool after having measured her feet, and the phone rings. You wanted on an international call, Alan. I thought to myself, that's funny. I went to the phone, Di's downstairs in the office in that beautiful, huge store we had opposite Melbourne Town Hall. She said, leave that customer, come down straight away. She's got no knickers on. Fact.
What did you do?
I do as I'm told, Michael. I went downstairs. I apologised to the client and said, excuse me, I have to get one of my staff to look after you.
Did she buy the shoes?
I think she did.
Alan, amazing. And there would have been so many other exciting stories. Tell me another one, another fun story of what happened. You thought, geez, I didn't think this was going to happen in my career. In fact, think about this, and we'll talk about that after the break.
Okay.
It's the Michael Kuzilny Show. The great man, Alan Pinkus, will be back very shortly. And thank you very much for watching wherever you are around Australia or the world. Love and best wishes from Michael Kuzilny. Tough times never last. We've all gone through those dark days. We all suffer from situational depression. You know, we pretend everything's great. This great man, Alan Pinkus from the Alan Pinkus Shoe Empire, 5 decades of, having a great time, and he's still having a great time now. But I remember he saw me one time, he said, Michael, I've retired and I'm feeling a little bit depressed. Is that what happens when you said to me one time they pull the rug from underneath you?
Yes.
After giving a few mil to say goodbye to the empire.
Yes, not enough. But basically, that's very true. What really happens when I'm going to say a word, when you're in love with what you do. Now, I might be unusual, but I really had this passion for development of style and design. When somebody turns around and says to you, basically, we won't be speaking to you again, you've got to start to say to yourself, what's it all about, Alfie? And therefore, having followed Professor Julius Subner Miller, Wires at Soul, I really now feel that I had to sit down and think about what I was going to do.
So, Alan, but cutting straight to the chase, you were getting down. You're getting depressed.
I was depressed. I mean, why don't people admit they're depressed or stressed? Why are people embarrassed today?
But you're surrounded by all your mates. I know all your mates. I see you in Church Street and everything.
And Rotary, I mean,
they love you.
I've been there for 45 years.
Got a beautiful lady, Di.
Yeah. But I mean, quite frankly, they all helped. But I had to do it myself.
Yes.
And by doing it myself, I started to write a book.
Because I remember I saw you at the coffee shop and you were writing. I thought, what's Alan doing now?
Yeah.
What empire is he working on now?
Right.
You were doing poetry.
And I was doing, I prefer poetry than writing a book, quite frankly. Poetry is an individualistic thing for me to handle.
Wow.
I can talk about whatever I want to talk about, but with a book, you've got to think about who's going to read it. Do I really care? But yes, I do. But the fact is, poetry, I can talk about different subjects. It might be nature, could be sex, it could be violence.
I'll just talk to the viewers. You know, I was in the city one time. I finished at the Melbourne Magistrates Court. I'm a lawyer. And I walked into the Arts Centre there in Melbourne. Sexpo was on. I thought I might have a look, just have a bit of a look, what's happening and that. This great man was on stage amongst thousands of people. There were some strippers on the other side doing pole dancing, but he was reading poetry. And there was a huge crowd watching the great man. Now, how did all that come about? Sexpo and poetry?
Well, actually, an author who's been very encouraging and helping me asked me to read some of my poetry at Sexpo.
Amazing.
And I've just got to say, it was an experience for me too.
And that's what I love about you, Al. You're not boring. You know, most people always do the same thing. They eat in the same restaurants. They hang around with the same people. But you live dangerously. You're always adding adventure.
I want to say this to you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
I learned something that day.
What?
On the stage, there was actually, I won't say a stripper, but she was a singer-cum-stripper.
Certainly.
Yes, and she performed on that stage.
Yes.
Eventually taking the bikini off, etc. Okay, on the stage.
While you're reading poetry?
No, I'd given up reading. I ran up to have a look. And believe me, I wish this had happened when I was going through my youth. I would have learned something about life.
Alan, I reckon it's because you look, you look like this Al Pacino or something along those lines. You know, women are taking their gear off while you're working, and now on stage. What's this theme here? That you're just.
Well, I believe ignorance is not bliss.
No.
And there's none so blind as those that will not see. And I think, unfortunately, today, the people, communities worldwide, it's all about me.
Mm.
They don't think about what effect they're having in society and what can they do to improve someone else's life.
I know, and you and Di are certainly helpers. And that's so true, folks, isn't it? There's the givers and takers of life. The takers, I want this, I want that, you know, and then there's the givers, the selfless people. And I always find that the givers in life always end up having a great life until death comes and wipes you out. I always find that the takers, you know, you always buy their lunch, they always backstabbing everybody, have a terrible life, you know. Be a giver like Alan Pinkus. Now, Alan, time's limited, yes, my dear brother.
Yes.
Read us a poem.
Okay. I have to read it. Look, I have to read it. I apologise.
Of course. Do you want my glasses?
No, I can't even remember my own name sometimes.
I'll meditate while you're doing it.
Okay, it's called First Love. Hours of dreams, puberty blues combust, flames sparkle, kindled by innocent lust. Instinctive, vibrant beacons burst alight, fabulous, fallacious love at first sight. Scribes fail to enlighten such a sensual scene, knowledge of sexual satisfaction, sadly unforeseen. Dawn to dusk, life's journey swiftly unfurls, daily arousing romance, boys and girls. Finesse of caring, sharing, yet to unfold, loving partners, serene stories should be told. Couples, salt of the earth, give more to each other than take. Inspirational, challenge all for future generations' sake.
Powerful, beautiful music to me. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that after all these years of hard work and everything, Alan just sits down and writes these beautiful words. Amazing. And the book, there's a book as well?
Yes, the book will be launched mid-March. It'll be on Kindle and Amazon, etc., etc. And
what's the book called?
The book is called Soul to Soul. In other words, your shoes, soul to your heart.
Yeah.
And it's all based on periods of our lives that we've all faced and had to dream about or think about or do.
Well, we might continue with that, Alan Pinkus, very shortly. We'll be back very shortly with a great man, Alan Pinkus. Don't go away. And thank you very much for watching. I'm Michael Kuzilny. The great man Alan Pinkus, one of the greatest shoe empires around the globe, spanning over 50 years. This guy's been on radio. He's been the judge for fashions on the fields, and he had a terrific life. But at one stage there, when he retired, he said he got a bit depressed. How do we get out of that pit of possible, actually, I won't even say possible depression, because no one wants to talk about it. Depression.
I talk about it, quite frankly, to anybody, everybody, because I think, unfortunately, everybody suffers.
Yes.
Downside. I call it the slippery slope of life. You're up here, then you go down, depends on how far you go down on the slippery slope, but you've got to make your way up. And you've got three alternatives. One, you either tread water and you eventually drown. If you go backwards, goodbye, Charlie, you've got to keep going forward.
Yes, sir.
And I actually, from my football days, I have learned you've got to start. I was a Southpaw too. You start using what God gave you, and that was to go forward.
Amazing.
You've got to keep going forward. You can't afford to stop, and that's why I took up writing a book. But I'll tell you one thing to all my young men out there right now. Dye your hair right at the start when you start to go grey, because the younger brigade in HR today look at you, and if you're over the age of 50, you're RS.
Don't you think it's nice to progress naturally?
No, I think women look absolutely stunning when they tend to put that little bit of extra work on their complexion and whatever it is. I am a great admirer of women. I'm a member of Me Too. I did get into trouble with poetry.
Alan Pinkus, what do you do for fun these days?
Actually, I still play tennis. I love my tennis, but that's an individualistic sport. I'm a great believer in team sports because it teaches you to share and care.
Mm-hmm. And besides all your sporting achievements, do you sometimes pop in just for to go down memory lane and look at your shoes to see the displays that, around Australia? I think they're at Sydney and Melbourne. Alan Pinkus shoes.
I'm going to be frank with you. I get a little bit depressed. I really do. And so now I'm working on a new design of something that's never been done before. And who knows what will happen. I don't know. But it's just a bit of fun. But I get depressed, Michael.
No, you don't. Fashion, what do you call it? Fashion on the field?
Yes, that was...
How was that?
Well, actually gave me a great opportunity to walk up to any female and say, oh, excuse me, I love the look of your shoes with your garment. It really compliments it. And they'd look at me like, thank you so much. Women don't get compliments enough.
No.
And being able to do that, and then I'd say, oh, by the way, I'm Alan Pinkus, not being rude. I'm not trying to pick you up. But I used to go to the races purposely to look at, in the members, to look at their shoes and their garments and make compliments to these ladies.
And I've noticed you compliment every female that comes into your range, men as well, but even the great Lady Nicola, and Di and everyone else, and maybe you think the blokes out there aren't complimenting their women enough.
Well, basically, I think they're the backbone of the country. I think they're the backbone of the future. They're the backbone of the Brighton Rotary Club. I love women. I love their decisiveness. A no's a no, not a maybe, by the way, back in your day.
Yes, sir.
Right? Therefore, no's a no, and I am an admirer. Love them.
Amazing. And Alan Pinkus, this coronavirus, not the beer, but this virus that's spreading all around the world, what's going to happen to our shops? Because I remember in Chinatown, I heard the shark fin is closing down.
All right. I think, look, it's a long subject. Retail basically is on the downslide. Okay, and the normal retail, like suburban strips, there's only about one left at the moment. I think that's Church Street, Little Brighton, for fashion. And you'll find there'll be coffee lounges and ladies' makeup, etc., etc. So I would say to you that we will see a different outlook in retail. And the landlords in this country, and I'm just going to be a little bit tough on this one, would you believe Sydney's about number 6 in the world per square metre cost for rental? We don't have the population of Tokyo, etc., etc., etc. We don't have the tourism like they do in New York, Los Angeles, London, Rome, Paris, which I used to go to all the time. So I'm saying to you now that there's something wrong in our country with the cost of rentals. And now retailers, all the journalists talk about is turnover. They don't talk about gross profit, net profit. They never mention, I keep reading them, they never talk about the fact.
Alan, there's tens of thousands of small business owners on the verge of going bankrupt. They're thinking to themselves and their families can't pay the rent. They're saying, shall we get out of this caper or do something else, or will things get better?
I am not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I wish them luck. I believe something has to be done in regard to the cost of retail properties in this country. And Melbourne's about number 8, by the way. It's sad indictment against the future and the lovely, and mainly women who are sales consultants, by the way, and wonderful. I think it's very sad for them for their future.
Well, that's right. So things were completely different with the Alan Pinkus empire and now. And your staff, what did you look for in a person? Did you interview them or did it die?
No, basically, It was just a matter of luck. If they were attractive, I looked after them. No, that's so stupid. But really, I like to eyeball people. In other words, if somebody can look you in the eye, okay, and say straight from the heart, I am keen to look after somebody else with what they desire, and I will help them, I'll say, great.
Amazing.
If they look down like this, they come in with no confidence. And I've had that with my graduates when I met
Alan Pinkus, I think you're one of the most beautiful and inspirational people I've met, and I'm glad we're good mates. It's been an honour and a pleasure. I'll see you down the street. God bless you, mate. I'm looking forward to reading the next poem. And it's been an honour and a pleasure, folks, to have your company. Love and best wishes from Michael Kuzilny. We'll see you next week. Good night.